Today on the Strong Mind podcast, I'm delighted to have Karl O'Rourke join us, and this is the first time I've actually chatted to Karl in person. I've discovered him on Instagram due to his exceptional taste in memes, which I'm sure we could chat about in a minute. But firstly, Karl, just over to you. Do you want to just give people a quick introduction to yourself and what you do?
Okay, amazing. So yeah, first and foremost, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, Chris. And so I am from Ireland, as you could probably tell by the dodgy accent. I am a personal trainer by trade, and I think we even spoke about this just before we got on. Even though I'm a personal trainer, if I was to look at kind of my day job and what I do on a daily basis, it probably floats around a lot of things that probably aren't personal training as well. So I run a mental health charity. I also run a hiking community group, where we take people hiking most weekends, get out in fresh air, exercise, have a chat. We do like kind of adventure retreats on the back of that. I'm going to Madeira next month with a group of 14 that we're taking away. So I do a host of all kind of different things. I run kind of fitness events as well, more on the self-development side of things, where we'll bring people in and get them to chat about life experiences. And even though it's to do with fitness, it really has not much to do with fitness at the same time. A lot of people struggling with maybe relationship with food, anorexia, binge eating, all these kind of things. Addiction. A lot of the times you'll know the same as me when people come in to train and to exercise. What they're essentially saying is that I don't feel great at the moment. I don't feel comfortable in my skin. I don't feel like myself. I want to feel better. And that can have little to do with actual exercise, and it might have a lot to do with, problems that go far deeper than losing weight or losing body fat or building muscle mass. But yeah, I by trade I'm a personal trainer. I was working online. I was working on as an online coach for the last 5 years. I put that job down for reasons that we'll probably get into throughout the podcast. But I wanted to, in a very digital based world where, relationships are very superficial, I wanted to try and make meaning in my life again. And, doing that through face-to-face interactions, connecting with people, seeing people at face value, and, personal training. And people forget about personal training, that's called personal, because you're building personal relationships. And I think in the online coaching world, people have forgot it's about kind of personal relationships, and they've gone for online transactions and what can I extract out of this person rather than how can I help this person. So I'm a personal trainer by trade, but kind of have my hands dipped in all things that are fundamentally based around connection and interaction and relationships. It took me a while to figure out that that's what I wanted to do, but now I'm pretty clear on my vision and my mission for what I want.
Super stuff. Yeah, thanks so much for that. It's a really interesting journey by the sounds of it, and I want to kind of rewind right back to the start of your career. Like, what was it initially that drew you to personal training?
Yeah, so I started personal training about 8 years ago now. And before that, I was doing a host of different jobs. I was a milk boy, jumping off the side of the van and dropping the cartons of milk down to all the dodgy houses in the council estate. I was working in hotels. I was doing wedding venues. I was a barman. I moved over to Mallorca, and I was working as a street rep over there. Where them annoying people that come up and be like, "Come into this bar and I'll give you a free shot." So that's where I think the relationship building started to come into play, because I was actually quite an anxious child and not a very socially confident person, even though I perceived that from the outside. From the inside, it didn't feel like that. I went over to New York and I started working as a street rep, and I'd have to, jump in and have conversations with 200 strangers a night, whether I liked it or not. So that kind of built a little bit of a resilience in me to be able to kind of speak to strangers and to, build relationships and build rapport with people very, very quickly. Some positive experiences, some negative experiences, a whole host, as you can imagine. Few English lads telling the Paddy to fuck off shop and they don't want to buy any potatoes and all that stuff. So yeah, I worked in New York as a barman, and after kind of a couple of months of doing that, and 5 a.m., 6 a.m. finishes, I was like, I wanted to come home, and I was like, I wanted to do something. I was always kind of into sport. I wasn't into the gym or anything like that. I wouldn't say I was a very healthy, and I didn't live a very healthy lifestyle as a teenager or anything like that, binge drinking in fields and all that other stuff that we do when we were younger. But I was still always active. I was still quite athletic, so I had that background in me. And when I got home, I was like, all right, well, what, I don't know what else I want to do with my life now. I've tried numerous things. I was in the army for a short spell of time as well, and I was like, I'm just going to go do. I actually originally did soccer studies because I was playing football at the time, so it was just a 1-year course on soccer studies, but gym instruction was one of the models in there, and that's when I was introduced to the gym, and I started training, and I thought, what, I actually feel good doing this. I'm actually building a little bit of confidence. I'm feeling a lot better in myself. And that then escalated into doing a personal training course. And then I, ended up getting a job in a gym. One of my friends got me a job there who I was playing football with. And then that introduced me to, taking classes, doing gym assessments, eventually bringing my own friends in to train them for free. And that was building up kind of the personal training brand. And then I've got my first few clients, and then I ended up being really successful in that. I went from like 0 to 120 members doing a big boot camp in like 6 months. It was one of the fastest growing boot camps in the country at the time. I basically just got people to train for 5 weeks, and then I brought them on a night out, and people were only really joining for the night out. And when I was looking back, I was thinking to myself, Jesus, I basically just put these poor people on a crash diet where I got them to train extremely for 5 weeks, and then I took them out on the piss. But then as I came full circle, I realized actually, what I was doing was I was actually building community with people, and that ties into what I do today. Like I had a lot of members who ended up getting married, ended up having kids, ended up becoming best friends. So, that was a big aspect of what I was doing, which I didn't realize I was actually doing at the time. I didn't understand the good things I was doing and the bad things that I was doing. But yeah, I was creating community through boot camps, and I really fell in love with that. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I did what every fitness coach does, and then decides that, I want to be an online coach and move to Australia or Bali and do all that crap. So I did that in 2019. I actually did it before COVID hit, because I know everybody transitioned online after COVID, but I was in there kind of ahead of the mark, and I had my online business set up and running, and I was doing well. I was, moving from place to place. I was in Southeast Asia, I was in Australia, I went back to Ireland, and I still continued to coach. I went to places like South America, to Colombia, and I had really good experiences doing the online coaching, and I did that for 5 years, and I did it properly as well. I didn't just get a big fancy app and just tell people to follow the app. I would be on daily calls with people, chatting to them about their relationship with food, and trying to improve their well-being, before improving their kind of overall physique. And I did a lot of courses along the way to help me with that, behaviour change courses, nutrition courses. So I got a lot out of my time as an online coach, and really getting to talk to people in depth that you don't really get on the gym floor, because you're with them for the hour, and you're trying to get them to do these 5 different exercises. So you'll touch base, but you're never really having conversations with people in depth like you do in the online coaching. There are some of the little distinguished is between the two of them. But eventually I was like, I'm kind of done with the online coaching scene right now. I don't need more reasons to be chronically online. I need more reasons in this digital world to see people face to face, and have a reason to get outside of the house, and all them things. So I only recently in September went back to being on the gym floor. I take a few clients for PT sessions a week, and then I have 3 coaches under me who help take the classes, and we're doing really well with that on top of the other side of things, where helping them by putting on fitness events like I spoke about, getting people in the door who can have a positive impact on their journey essentially. So yeah, Short answer, basically, I've done a lot of little jobs. Decided that I really liked personal training. Have tried all the different aspects of coaching people and training people, and here we are today.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've kind of had a sample of everything with the boot camps, with the online coaching, the in-person stuff as well. And I also like what you had said about kind of like in the early stages, you figured out, or looking back now, you see the things that maybe you did well, but also the things that you didn't do so well. And I suppose that's all part of the process, isn't it? I look back at
absolutely.
when I first started, and I was just like, yeah, I cringe a lot when I think about some of the things I asked or got clients to do in terms of their coaching. So that was really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I would say, like, when I look back at when I first started as a trainer, like all the programming, there was no programming. It was like, let's put a weighted vest on this person, have them run up and down the stairs like they're trying to invade Iraq. I would have them doing like all sorts of stuff that I would never coach now. But again, like I think you have to make them mistakes. And here's the funny part is that even looking back at the things I cringe at now, I don't cringe at as much, being a little bit wiser in what I'm doing, because what I did actually realize is, even though my programming was crap, even though I had no skill in terms of cueing or exercise selection or helping people with technique, a funny thing that I realized was that people still got really good results. And the reason that they got really good results was because, first, all right, you're working with the general public. So the most important thing with them is compliance. Like, can you get them through the door, and can you get them moving their body? And pretty much with most of the people on the planet, if you can get them to that stage, they're going to see results, because a lot of the society is inactive. A lot of the society doesn't go to the gym. They feel like they don't belong in the gym. So if they can have people that they feel like they can relate to and that aren't intimidating, and you can get them through the door, doesn't matter how shit your programming is, you're still better than the personal trainer who's intimidating, that isn't actually getting clients because nobody wants to go to that person. Doesn't matter if they're an exercise scientist. Doesn't matter if they have the best literature in terms of knowing what exercises to do, what exercises not to do, what's optimal, what's not optimal. If you're not getting people through the door, and you're not getting them to actually enjoy their hour with you, and they're not coming back, you're not going to help anyone.
That's a really, really helpful perspective, definitely, and it is what you touched on was you put the emphasis on the personal and personal training, and that is definitely a lesson that I've learned. I learned very quickly in the early stages of my career. I was putting so much focus on the training side, and I had come off the back of uni and doing exercise science, and I felt like at that point, quite naively, I knew it all, and all I needed to do was just design the perfect program, and they'll stick to it. I'll share my knowledge, and that'll solve their problems and help them. Yeah, that'll be enough. And very quickly, I found that that approach simply wasn't working. And actually, and we touched on this before we started the recording, I had clients start telling me about their life story, and I'm looking at the clock like, we've only got 20 minutes left, and you're telling me about what's going on at home and work and relationships, and I'm like, oh, come on, let's get this finished. So can you maybe talk about your own realization, I guess, when it comes to the personal emphasis, and just how important that connection between the client and coach really is?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I think I think it's actually it's more difficult for someone coming into the industry who is actually well educated than it is for someone who might not be as educated but just has people skills straight off the bat. Because again, the Gen Pop client doesn't know the difference between someone who really kind of knows the stuff and someone who might be just bluffing it, which is terrible. But like, if you can get people who are well educated in what they do, and then they understand that it is a people first kind of business. Ideally we should be going for both, right? Ideally you should be trying to learn as much as you can all the time, and always trying to develop your skills as a trainer, and also develop your people skills and your communication, which is being relatable to the right people. I think everyone can be relatable to someone anyway. I don't think there is no unrelatable people. I think we can all be relatable to people if we're trying to be ourselves more and letting that come out, because not everyone is going to want to work with one specific type of person. Like me working with, a Gen Pop client, someone who is very sports specific and really wants to max out that like extra 1, 2 or 3% in their performance. I'm not going to be the person to go to, and understand that I can refer that person on to someone who is maybe more science based and someone who has more experience at a higher level, which is a great thing. That's why I think the fitness industry can be a great place, because there is space for everyone if we understand that. I think a lot of coaches don't understand that, and that's why they try to shit on each other, because they think people are taking clients from them, which isn't the case. You're just not showing up as the best kind of trainer that you can be. That's why people aren't going to you. But in terms of your question, and when I kind of realized it was a people's, I suppose when I kind of really realized that the fitness industry was about helping people and not being into fitness, was at the start when I was doing it and I was doing really well. I didn't understand why I was doing really well, because I had nothing to go off. I had no experience, but I was doing really well. And I wasn't, a funny thing was, I wasn't concerned about what anyone else was doing. Like, I didn't know any of the other trainers in the town. They all knew me. They all didn't like me. But I wasn't concerned about what other trainers were doing. And I think a big thing that trainers make, a mistake that they make in the fitness industry, is they're all trying to impress each other rather than focusing on what the client needs. And I think that's also another big aspect, is that when you're trying to impress other trainers, instead of just talking the language of your clients. I was talking the language of my clients because I probably knew only like 1% more than they did, which was actually helping me rather than hindering me. It was actually when I started to understand more and learn more that I probably became less relatable to Gen Pop clients, which is a funny thing as well. But I think it was actually just years of experience looking back. Then I could see the patterns of why things were working well for me and what things weren't. And sometimes knowing more can be a hindrance to you rather than a strength. If you allow it. Obviously, I'm not one saying don't try to educate yourself more. Don't try to be more knowledgeable. Of course, always be looking for self-development in your career. I'm a big advocate of that. But that doesn't mean that you have to talk a different language to your clients, I suppose. And then in terms of actually just, why it's so important to build relationships, I noticed that the best clients that I had actually ended up becoming good friends. I ended up becoming good friends with them after. And I know some people say in the fitness industry that, don't make friends with your clients, that's bad for business, or whatever they say, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But some of the best people I know started off as clients. And we started off with that professional relationship. But when you're meeting people every day and having conversations with them every day, and these people, like, it might be the only hour that they get in the day where they, get away from work, get away from kids, get away from the house, have an hour to themselves. It's a really important hour for them. And I think a lot of the time we forget how important that hour is to them. And I think, again, when you just see people coming in as transactional, that's gonna impact your business down the line, because you're gonna realize, okay, why are people not coming back to me? Why am I not retaining clients? And you're only going to show people how to do a certain amount of exercise is a certain amount of time. A lot of the time what they continue to come in for and they continue to show up for is they enjoy spending that hour with you. It's their sanctuary for the hour. It's their escape from life from an hour. So if they feel comfortable with you, and you've built that rapport with them, you have a client for life. And that's something that we should be. I don't mean I'm not an advocate of trying to get a client to stay on as long as possible so you can try and rinse as much money out of them as possible. I don't mean it in that way. But if someone's happy to stay with you because they just enjoy spending that hour in the gym with you, having the chats with you, it makes the quality of their day and the quality of their life better. They're a better person for it. They're a better person at home for it. I mean, that is worth its weight in gold. You have a client for life. You probably have a good friend for life, and they are also getting massive value from being in there with you because they trust you, and you're improving the quality of their life by not just getting them stronger, not just making them healthier, but also making them healthier in terms of they probably have that connection with someone outside of their other relationships that they might need.
A couple of things that you said there that like totally speaking my language. The first one is that idea of like clients becoming friends, and I don't quite understand this idea of like, you know, oh, it's business and that, you know, we need to keep them separate, because ultimately as it's part of it comes with the job. Really, if you're going to be that personal trainer, ultimately you are going to build these strong relationships, which are likely going to lead to a friendship. So that was the first thing, and the second one was this idea of like, yeah, I never go in. I make it clear with all clients that I've worked with, you know, my goal is to get you to the point where you feel like you can go off yourself. You have the knowledge, the skills to do this on your own. But so often it's the case that clients get to that point, but they do want to continue on because that 1 hour that you've talked about is invaluable to them. And it's not necessarily just about doing the physical work. It's also being able to talk through some difficult shit that maybe they wouldn't have an opportunity to talk to anyone else about. So yeah, that's I totally agree with you.
And this is why, even when we were talking about before we jumped online, you were speaking about how, you know, you have aspirations to maybe, you know, go into counselling or something like that. And I think that is a route for a lot of personal trainers, because they do realise that, oh, it's not just about, you know, putting on this structured session and making sure that they're accountable to this session and then going through it. A lot of personal trainers end up realising that, you know, this is, again, a lot of communication, a lot of kind of, you know, digging into difficult circumstances that people are having, and just trying to be that guide, pushing them in the right way to make the right decision for them without kind of dictating their lives. And I think that gets a lot of people, you know, interested in that aspect of you know, work in terms of psychology and stuff like that. So yeah, I could completely see why you'd be interested in going in that avenue.
Absolutely. I mean, that is 100% why I've got that interest in psychology and potentially going down a route like counselling is because of that experience of being a personal trainer and coming to those realizations that we've chatted about. And often from my experience, you know, I find that, and I think you've touched on it as well, you know, clients will come to you from that, in that sort of fitness mindset of like, I want to lose fat and I want to gain muscle, look better. And that's all fine and well. But often there is, or pretty much always, there's that underlying emotional driving force behind it. And
Absolutely.
if we can begin to work with that, then actually in terms of long-term progress and success, that's definitely the route to go down. And from my perspective, I think I feel like you could make more of an impact potentially as like a qualified counsellor to kind of really get under the surface, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you're like you're really covering all angles there, then, aren't you? Because yeah, like you said, I always say that to people that, you know, sometimes the weight that you need to lose isn't physical. Sometimes the weight that you need to lose is mental. It's the weight of like heavy expectations that you have put on yourself, or that society might have put on you to look a certain way, to feel a certain way. And a lot of times that we bring a client in to train them, and they might not have lost any weight in 12 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is. But they say, oh my God, I look and feel 10 times better. And you know, in your eyes, they probably look quite similar to what they've looked at, but they feel a million times better. And because they never needed to lose weight, they probably just needed to, you know, get a little bit of confidence or a little bit of self-worth back.
So as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I mentioned that I came across you on social media under the handle The Uneducated PT, and you've built up quite a following. I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about, firstly, where the Uneducated PT comes from, and also how you find the life on social media.
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot. I always laugh when I get asked about it. So essentially, I changed my name to the Uneducated PT a couple of years ago, because, you know, what I found was
do you know the Dunning-Kruger effect? So the Dunning-Kruger effect is like when you start out something, you have this kind of arrogance that you think you know everything, when in fact it's when you know the very little. It's like the the kid in the car who's talking to their parent, and the kid's like, yeah, I know, mum, I know that. The kid thinks they know everything, even though the kid hasn't even experienced life yet, and soon they will know, and soon they will realize. And when I started out my career in the industry, I think I might have been like, I wouldn't say arrogant, but ignorant to thinking that okay, I have this wrapped up now. I know what I'm doing. I know how to train people properly. I know what advice to give them to get them in shape, and so on and so forth. And it's like, as time went on, and you realize that there's so many aspects to this conversation on health and fitness, and different avenues that you can go down, and different problems and situations for different people. And the more I realized that, the more I started to find out about other things, the more I realized I didn't know anything, and how much depth was in this topic. And then that was like, oh crap, I know nothing, and now I need to kind of realize that I don't know anything, and almost be as much of a student as I can. When I started out off personal training, like, clients would come to me then, and they would ask questions like, oh, Karl, should I be fasting? Or Karl, should I do the vegan diet? Or Karl, should I, follow the keto? Or Karl, what about the carnivore diet? Or Karl, what about apple cider vinegar? And, should I be eating after 6 p.m.? And all these kind of questions that would come up. And, I realized that the more questions that people asked, then I was like, oh, I actually don't know anything about any of these topics. And then I started to kind of deep dive in them, and I did my nutrition courses and stuff like that. And I realized even in nutrition alone, like, it's such a wide topic. And like, again, obviously people, study their whole lives to be an expert in that particular field. And, when you're a personal trainer, it's like, you need to kind of have you need to wear multiple hats. You need to understand a little bit about behavior change, a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about, exercise science, a little bit about people. And then I realized there's so many different, a little bit about, understanding what to do with people's mental well-being, and how to approach things. So like, there's so many different little aspects to, a lot of people will say like, oh, I'm just a personal trainer, and I've said it as well in times as oh yeah, I'm just a personal trainer. But like, a personal trainer has so many kind of strings to their bow. Like, they have to be good at marketing, they have to be good at sales, they have to be good with people, they have to be knowledgeable, or if they want to be good at their job, they need to be knowledgeable. And what I realized is that there's so many things to learn, and it made me feel like, oh shit, I don't know anything. And then when I finally did start to learn a little bit, and I started to become more competent and more confident in my own ability as a trainer, it was very easy for me to then turn around to people and say things like, oh yeah, I don't know anything about that topic, or yeah, I'm uneducated on that topic. And I think with confidence now, it's like, even though I probably do know a lot in terms of my field, I still take the perception that, I'm uneducated, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just kind of making it up as I go. But it gives me the mindset of being humble and continuing to learn all the time. And I think you're only going to be a good trainer if you have that mindset that you're always willing to learn, and you're always of the perception that you don't know enough, and that there's more you need to learn in order to provide the best service possible. And I think it's even a mistake of experts as well. People who are experts in their field, one of the biggest mistakes that they make is, because you're an expert in your field, you feel like you're an expert in every person you come across. Now, you could be the expert in exercise science, you could be the expert in nutrition science, you could be the expert in, whatever it is, psychology. But that doesn't mean that you're the expert in that person. And, many times we can, decide that, oh, this is the way to do things because this has worked 100 times over. And then you'll meet that outlier who that doesn't work for. And, because you have so much experience and you have your expertise, you can very easily fall into that trap of doing things the way you've always done them, because that's the way things have always been done, and that's the way that things have always worked. But if you come from a perception that, every time you have a conversation with someone, you're there to learn something new, whether that's learn something new about them or learn something new about, you know, the trades that you do. I think that's a better way to approach life and to approach your work, because you don't fall into them traps of thinking that you know everything. And when you think that you know everything, that's when you start to make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of what you've said, like, totally resonates with me in that. In the early stages, I similarly wouldn't have said it was arrogance, but there was a level of ignorance potentially there about, like, yeah, feeling like I've done the education, I went to uni and I've got the degree and I've got the knowledge, like I am that expert. And as you say, actually, very quickly you realize, like, no, I don't know a lot. And I in the early stages of my career, certainly, I had to learn, like, yeah, I don't know, can I get back to you type thing. Like, I'll go away and I'll look into this for you, and then I'll come back with what I found. And obviously, that sort of attitude as a young personal trainer is definitely the way forward, because it does keep you learning as you go, and keeps you humble too, I suppose, like you said. So yeah, you've explained where the uneducated PT idea has come from. What about then social media? Because I'll share a little bit about my experience of social media. I have a very sort of love-hate relationship with it, in that I do quite enjoy creating content on the whole, but then from that, you touched on the sort of marketing side. A lot of the time for me, it feels very much like I have to do this, because if I want the business to grow, then I need to be posting on social media daily. I would say my perception, you can correct me on this, is you seem to quite enjoy social media, because you post a lot of like memes and clips from things that you find interesting. And yeah, that's always really intrigued me. So can you maybe share a little bit about your story on social media and your thoughts on it more generally?
It's a love-hate relationship, I'd say, the same as yourself, the same as most people. And just going back on something you said there, what I thought was really, really important as well. You said that, like, when a client asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you said, I don't know, but I will get back to you and I'll find the answer. That's, like, for me, that is the biggest green flag of a personal trainer, someone who's not afraid to say when they don't know the answer, but also willing to go and figure out the best solution. I think, like, when I started out as a trainer, when people ask me a question, I used to, like, bluff the answer so people wouldn't realize that I didn't know what I was talking about, because I didn't want to be, you know, known as a fraud. Whereas now I'm very much confident to say, oh, I don't know the answer to that, or I'm not I don't have no knowledge in that topic. And I think that's a real degree of confidence. That's when when you've really become, you know, competent in your field, and when you have the ability to say you don't know. I think that's an amazing thing for trainers to have the ability to do. And I think that comes from repetition and experience and the confidence through that. Back to your message on social media. Yeah, like, for me, I think I'm just kind of figuring out, as everybody else. I do love social media to a degree. Like, I love being creative. I love writing things. I love getting my thoughts down. Like, for me, I always say to people, because people will ask me, like, oh, do you have a content strategy for your social media? I'm like, no, I don't. There's no strategy going on. It's just, on my phone is just an extension of my thoughts. And I think you have to be careful with that as well, right? Because you don't want to, like, be projecting your whole life on social media to a bunch of strangers. You want to kind of keep some of your life private to the people that you love. And I think there can be a very delicate balance of trying to find that. But, like, social media gave me so many benefits. Like, if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't have met loads of amazing mentors who have helped me, you know, educate myself. I've done a lot of my education through social media, and then finding different courses, and, you know, finding podcasts of people I found interesting. So, like, there's so much positives to it, and, you know, through that, obviously helping me to run my business in certain ways as well. But, you know, you also have the other part of that where it's like, okay, you can live your life on social media, you can live your life in this, you know, comparison trap that we have. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of kind of mental health issues that are coming from people spending too much time online and not enough time in person. So, like, it's such a difficult and delicate kind of thing to get right, and to kind of create your feed so it's positive, but also not spending too much time on it. So like I don't want to sit here and pretend like I'm some expert on how you should navigate social media, because I definitely am, and I definitely probably use it far too much. I definitely enjoy using it, but it can definitely be detrimental to my mental health at sometimes. And then kind of being aware of that is really important. Like I said to you, Chris, so I was working online for like 5 years, and only recently I decided to stop working as an online coach. And the reason I did that was because I found I was spending too much time online and not enough time, in person, meeting people, having human interactions. And the one thing that would have had to gone there was for me was the online coaching. Was feeling like I needed to show up online, that I needed to post content daily, that I needed to jump on Zoom calls with clients. Whereas now when I want to talk to a client, they have to meet me down in the gym, they have to talk to me in person, and it's great. I feel better for being outside. I feel less socially anxious. I've never really been that socially anxious, but I think the more time I was spending online, and I was spending less time seeing people on a daily basis, you kind of you forget how to kind of interact with people. And then I was starting to kind of have all these weird feelings where I was getting nervous even to go down to the supermarket to pick out food and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, something really needs to change in my life. And it was also like, it was a accumulation of things as well. I retired from football because I'm getting very old and my joints are starting to get sore when I run. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop playing football. And I had moved out, so I wasn't living with my family. I had a big family, and we would all live in the same house, so it would be full of like arguments and conversations and laughter. So when I was younger, I was constantly interacting with people, whether I was out on the estate playing with friends, or when I was playing sports, or having a big family. And then obviously as I grew up, you stop playing sports, you stop seeing your friends as much, you don't see your family as much. And I found that, okay, I wasn't actually interacting with people a lot, and I was chronically online, and that was starting to impact me. So that was when kind of the online scene and social media started to probably not work in my favor anymore. So I had to make changes to my life. I had to curate a life where I was I'm still online. Obviously we're doing this podcast online, and it's great that we can do things like that, but also kind of balancing that with getting out and seeing people, and getting outside, and getting some sunlight on your face, and talking to people in person, and trying to stay connected in a very disconnected world. So for me, in terms of social media, it really is just it's a balancing act. It's trying to see people in person as much as possible. It's trying to do things. It's trying to incorporate human interaction, and using social media as a tool to do that. And you said, sometimes you have to show up on social media and make content to get clients and stuff like that. Like, while I do agree that social media, it can be a big aspect of people's business, we can't forget that people were making money, and people had really successful businesses in the fitness industry long before Instagram and Facebook and all came up. And I can still do it now. I can go down to the gym and I can have a chat with people in person, and I can talk to people out on the street, and they can end up inquiring about my services, and that's still a possibility for people. And I think even when you're working online, people will still buy from people that they know. So if you have an interaction with someone in person and then they follow you online, it's probably more inclined to work with you than someone from halfway across the world who's never really had a proper conversation with you. I think it's a lot easier to create that trust and that buy-in from people when they've actually met you in person. So I am a big fan of social media. I do enjoy using it. I enjoy the creative process of writing out ideas, whether that's some sort of a nutrition idea or a training idea or whatever it is. But trying to balance that with real connection and real human interaction, I think is really key, especially as we go forward and we go further and further into the matrix.
Yes, totally, absolutely. And I've really noticed this as I've aged and got into my 30s, and similarly stopped playing football because of injuries and what have you. But yeah, I feel like my social circle is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller, and I do think that naturally as you age that does happen. But also, I am very aware of the role that potentially online work, the online world has played in that as well, and continues to play in that, and probably will continue to play as I get older still. So yeah, it's a really interesting sort of balance that we kind of have to strike there. I did want to, because I touched on some of the content you create. You obviously create your own stuff, and one of the one that stood out most to me whilst we're on the topic was one you created about convenience and connection. It was, and the way you worded it was, it was really, really powerful. So I would highly recommend people go check it out. But I did want to kind of expand that question a little bit more, and get your thoughts on it. Specifically when we think about men, because obviously this is the podcast is specifically thinking about the challenges men face, and I've seen it and I've experienced it myself, that connection is potentially an element of health and well-being that we're simply not paying enough attention to, and it's having quite a significant impact on men's physical and mental health. So I was just wondering if you could maybe share some of your own thoughts on that in particular, around the importance of connection.
Yeah, 100%. So I did a talk recently in a university in Ireland, and I spoke a lot about men's struggles. I don't know if I have the research up here, but I think it was 1 in 4 men in America, it's like they say that they don't have one close friend that they can rely on. I might be paraphrasing the statistics. I had it written down somewhere. But it's a lot of men who don't have one close friend that they can count on in an emergency. And friendship is such a huge, friendship and connection is such a huge part of our health. Loneliness is as detrimental to your health as smoking and inactivity and obesity. It increases the likelihood of dementia, of cardiovascular disease. It's really, really serious for your health. Once you get to chronic, so there's 2 different types of loneliness. You have transitional loneliness, which everybody goes through, right? We all go through transitional loneliness in times of our life. I've gone through it myself. Whether you move to a new city, or you solo travel, or the kids move out of the house, or you get a new job, or like you said, you get to your 30s and you don't see your friends as often as you used to. So we all go through stages of loneliness, which is completely normal. It's a completely normal human experience. But when that starts to progress, where we don't fix that kind of disconnect in our life, then it starts to become chronic loneliness, and chronic loneliness is really, really detrimental to our health. And I think this is what's happening to a lot of men as well. A lot of men have no connections in their lives. They're also, struggling to get work. They're struggling to get paid. They're doing worse in universities. They've lost any sort of purpose. Women are outdoing them in terms of income. Men are. There's also stat as well. I think men under 30, I think that it's rised up to 30% or something like that in terms of no sexual activity. So men, they've no purpose, they've no work, they're not getting into relationships, they're not talking to women, they've no friends at the moment. We always say that men need to talk, right? But we tell men to talk, and then we don't actually listen to their problems. And there's lots of societal problems that are contributing to men suffering both mentally, and I think that's the big issue, is that we don't actually talk about these issues that men are facing, or try to fix them. There's huge stats on sexual abuse that men suffer from that nobody talks about. It's nearly as high as women, if not on an even playing field. Men don't get the same recognition in the courts when it comes to getting their children. So they're at a big disadvantage. But of course, nobody feels sorry for men, and it's a difficult one, because we're not meant to feel sorry for men. And I don't know if it's about that we should feel sorry for men, or we should create a society where we empower them again. I can't say that I have the answers to that. I'm just reading the statistics that I see. But the main area that I've focused on, because part of my job as a trainer is to create community. I call it social health. Not just looking after your physical or your mental health, to focus on your social health, because we are social beings. We need connection. We need to be with each other. We need friends. We need relationships. We don't, as a society, we don't thrive by ourselves. We thrive together. And that's really where I've looked at in terms of where men are really struggling, is that they find it hard to stick to stay in relationships, both with friends and especially women are really the kind of the social beings of the relationship. I know, even looking at my own family. So my mum and dad were married for 50 years. My mum passed away from cancer, but whenever we were going to do something, like, it was my mum that decided that we're going to see our auntie Sandra, we're going here, we're going there, and my dad would just like taggle along, you know what I mean, like a lost puppy. So he would just go wherever she was going. She would make all the arrangements, like, we're going here on this weekend, we're going there on this weekend. And when she passed away, you could really see how he almost struggled to hold on to kind of social situations and social relationships and stuff like that, because men don't say, hey, do you want to go for a walk to a friend, or will we go catch up for a coffee? We just kind of we kind of build our relationships through like work or through like sports and stuff like that, and doing things, whereas women really kind of interact with each other in conversation. So I think men are finding it, especially now in a digital world where, again, we're spending more time alone than ever before. We're spending more time on our phone. I think the statistics said that we've gone from like spending 5 hours a day by ourselves to spending up to 7.5, 8 hours a day by ourselves on average. Like, that's insane. People spending 7.5 hours a day by themselves. We spend on average 2.5 months a year checking our phones. So like all these things, we've less friends than ever before. We're in a friendship crisis at the moment. So with all these things kind of combining, you're getting a lot of lonely men who feel like they don't have a purpose, feel like, their life would probably be better if they were gone. And, this probably is all contributing to the high suicide rates that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, I totally agree with. It's a really good insight there as well. And I think the thing that stands out for me most is that we really just need to listen. And you said it yourself, we need to listen to what men are saying about this situation, because it's very easy to look at it on Facebook and just approach it with practical solutions that might work for women, but maybe don't necessarily align with men, because we are, whether it's that nature versus nurture, if it's socialization, or if it's something that's within us, that we can't kind of expect to take the same approach and have a similar outcome. And I think, that's what stands out for me most, is that men are really, I'm generalizing here, but there are some real struggles that a lot of men face, but yet are we really listening to what they're saying around these challenges? And I would argue on the whole, probably not. Yeah, and it's a difficult one. It is a real challenge. The importance of connection. I reflect on my own friendships, and I actually did an episode on friendships at the start of the year. I did it, and it's November stat, which was the same as the one that you cited. That was 1 in 4 report having no close friends whatsoever. And that's pretty
scary.
Scary, yeah. I was going to say it's frightening actually that's the case, because when you're in a moment where life is kind of like life's getting the best of you, and you need that support, like, where do you turn?
100%. And you know what? I have a story that I shared with that talk that I did as well, and I spoke about how important friendship is for our physical and mental well-being. And but to have strong relationships, there's two things that we're missing in life, because a lot of people think that friendships are just a guarantee that we should always have them, because we probably had them when we were younger. But as life moved on, it's like your friendships are like any other relationship. They're like your relationship with the gym. They're like relationships with your partner. They're like any other relationship. For them to grow strong, you actually need to work on them. And two things that I said to the people that I was talking to is that if you want strong relationships in your life, because you should want strong relationships in your life, because they're the biggest determinant of a healthy and happy life, is you need to work hard. So you need to be intentional and you need to be vulnerable. And what I mean by that is like, even like deciding that, every week I'm going to set aside an hour so that I'm going to meet up with this friend. And even if we can't meet up, I'm going to make sure that I message them, or I'm going to, better than message them, I'm going to kind of even FaceTime them, because it's better that we actually, we take a lot more out of conversations, even by just seeing each other's face expressions. Most of communication isn't done through actual speaking to each other. It's tonality, it's gestures, it's all that things. So, even showing up and FaceTiming your friend, and another thing I said was making sure that you're vulnerable. And I spoke about how, I was suffering with loneliness at the, it was last year. I also got like bad news where like an old girlfriend of mine who I was really close with, she rang me and she was like, listen, Karl, I just want to let you know that I'm pregnant. And I thought that you deserve to know before you see it on social media and stuff like that, because, it would probably be a big shock, because we were together like 8 years or something like that. And I was like, okay, like we ended on good terms. And I was like, okay, I appreciate you telling me that. Best of luck with everything and so on and so forth. So we ended on good terms and it was nice. But the next couple of days, then I had all these kind of thoughts roaming around my head, and I was like, oh my God, Karl, everyone's moving on with their life and you're staying static and you're such a loser, and you know what I mean, you're staying here, doing TikToks while everyone's having families and getting a house and a home and stuff like that. And a big aspiration for me going forward is I definitely want to start a family at some point in my life. I think it's a big goal for me. So I obviously had all these things in my head. Now, lucky enough that I was actually prepping for this talk where I was talking about vulnerability and intention. And, when you feel like crap, like it's the time when you least want to reach out to someone, because you hate that feeling of vulnerability. You hate that feeling of feeling like you're a burden on someone. But that's the exact time when you need to actually reach out to someone. So I texted my friend, and he's a really good friend. I've been best friends with him since I was 5 years old. And we don't see each other as much as we'd like to, because again, people have busy lives, we have jobs and so on and so forth. He just had a kid. But I told him, I said, listen, this is what's happened. She messaged me and said this, and he was like, all right, let's go for food. And like the best thing about my friend was, he didn't try to fix me. I didn't need that. I didn't want people to tell me what I should do with my life and blah, blah, blah. I just needed the active presence, a good friend being there, knowing that I wasn't alone. And I instantly felt better. And there's a great quote from Simon Sinek. He says, don't deny the people who love you the opportunities to be there to support you. And I think that's such a really good reframe in fact, because a lot of times we feel like a burden for people. But if someone loves you, they want to be there to support you. If they're a real friend, they want to be there in your time of need. And you owe it to them to open up and let them know that you're struggling. And like if we look at death by suicide, if you ever talk to people's friends who have died by suicide, they're almost enraged. Like they're like, I wish he would have reached out to me. I wish he would have said something. They're almost pissed off that they didn't get the opportunity to help them through that difficult period. So I think that's a really good reframe. It's like when you are struggling, when you are in, the depths of your thoughts, you owe it to the people who love you to reach out and let them know that you are struggling. And that's where it comes from. It's like you must allow yourself to be vulnerable, because there's nothing more brave, there's nothing more courageous than being vulnerable. Like we don't want to, we're scared to be vulnerable, but you can't be courageous if there's not also fear attached to that. And I think if you're afraid to be vulnerable, but you do it anyway, that's the most courageous thing, because that's literally the definition of courage, is be scared but do it anyway. And then on top of that is just intentionality, making sure that all the time you're having conversations with friends, or you're waiting around, or you're giving up your time, or like will be quick enough to go to a business meeting, or will be quick enough to meet up with a romantic partner, but yet we feel like we're allowed to cancel on our friends because they'll understand. They like, oh, that's not going to affect our relationship. That's not going to impact our relationship. They're my friends. They'll always be there. And we treat friendship like a second-class relationship. But in reality, your friendships will determine the quality of your life and the quality of your happiness. So it's something that we should really be putting effort in, and we shouldn't take it lightly. We should, make sure that we're intentional, that we're showing up, that we're, going on friends dates, that we're checking up on each other, and when we are struggling, that we're vulnerable with each other.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing all that and a bit of your story too. Because it sounds like it was a really difficult time, understandably, but at the same time, it sounds also like it highlighted just how important having that strong friendship there really was for you, and how much it helped. So yeah, thank you. It's really great insight. I want to move on a little bit. I know you have already touched on parts of your own story there, and as I say, thanks for doing so. I'm very aware that you're you've touched on how you're the uneducated PT, but you're obviously clearly very well educated on things around health generally, but also mental health too. So I was just wondering, like, where does that parts of your story that have sort of given you that passion and desire to learn more about that, and to help others with their not just physical health but their mental health also? And if so, I would love for you to share some of that.
Yeah, so I think it's like we spoke about at the start. When you're starting out, you think you know everything and you don't know anything, and then the more you start to learn, the more you realize you don't know, and there's more for you to learn. And for me, when I started out as a trainer, health for me was, you do push-ups and go to the gym and go running. If you do that, you're healthy. Everything else falls into place. And then over time, obviously, I understood that, that is just physical health is just one aspect of this equation, and that we have our mental well-being and we have our social health. And, that's the definition of health by the World Health Organization. It's a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being. So therefore, you can't have your physical health without looking after your mental health. You can't have your mental health without looking after your physical health. You can't have the two of them without looking after your social relationships. They all connect, and I think they're all important. And a big aspect, I suppose, of the mental health part of things for me was, even through being a trainer and, helping people with their different goals and stuff like that, you realize that you could get people in really good shape, but, it still doesn't mean that they're healthy. I mean, we could look at, even if we keep on the topic of men, muscle dysmorphia is a huge thing that's going around right now that men are really struggling with. They're trying to get as big as possible because they feel that they need to, in order to, be accepted by society. And even though they might be physically healthy, they might lift weights and so on and so forth, they're not healthy up here. They're not healthy in their head. And they look at themselves in the mirror, and even though they might be huge, they still feel small, they still feel inadequate. They're comparing themselves with other people online. Again, touching back on the social media side of things, where this is the negative part of social media that we need to kind of navigate. They have this distorted view of what it is to be a man, that I need to be, big broad shoulders and a six-pack and drive a Ferrari, and going around flashing money like I'm Andrew Tate and all this stuff. And you have these kind of lads in school who think that's if I do that, then I'll be happy, then I'll be accepted by society, in a society where men are really struggling. So it's not just enough to help people to get into shape. It's also, making sure that they have the right mindset around what they're doing, and that they're not essentially, the intention is always the most important thing, right? Like, it's the reason behind why you're exercising. It's the reason behind why you're eating that meal. It's the reason behind why you're replying to that extra email when you should probably just put the laptop down and go out and see your friends. Like, why are you running yourself into the ground? You started off this pursuit to be healthy, but now there's nothing healthy about the behaviors that you're engaging in. And I think that's a really important thing. I always say that transformation happens from the neck up, not the neck down. So we need to really work on what's going on up in your head and the reasoning behind why you're doing the actions and behaviors that you're doing. And then the body will follow after that. So it's such a complex thing. Is that like we need to look after our mental well-being, we need to look after our physical health, we need to look after the relationships around us, and we need to really balance all these things. And I suppose I run a charity called Carry the Weight, which is basically what we do is, we get the community together and we do a sunrise hike with a weighted backpack on. And, we try to raise as much money as possible. So my initiative, and me and a friend, Rob, is that we can create free therapy, free mental health services for everyone in our town. Which is about 40,000 people. So right now we've done 2 hikes. We've raised over 1,400 quid so far. So there's people right now in our community getting free mental health services who otherwise probably wouldn't have got access to them, because a lot of people who are also suffering with their mental health are also suffering with their income as well. Because them problems, they correlate. I would say, I remember I heard a great thing from a therapist online, and she said, if we really want, the best way to improve people's mental health is probably to pay them a little bit more, because a lot of people are just suffering from all the anxiety of not knowing how they're going to get the next plate of food on the table, or how they're going to pay their next bill, and all these things are making it difficult. Or if we look at if a man feels like he can't provide for his family, he feels worthless, he's going to say like, oh, they would be better off without me. I think there's some famous case where someone killed themselves because a husband killed themselves because he thought, I think he had insurance, and he thought the family would be better off with the insurance money rather than him being alive, which is such a tragic story to listen to. So so the initiative that we do with the Carry the Weight is basically we want to get free mental health services to everyone in our area, which is insane because it should be free to everyone anyway. It's insane that the government can't provide that, but with the lack of resources our country has, it's actually quicker to go through a private group. So that's what we do basically, is that we raise as much money as possible, go straight to the private group that we're in ties with, and then people get seen straight away. And it's the same with my clients as well. They obviously have access to the gym and to our training, but they also have access to free mental health services as well. Because I just think that it's such an important aspect of your health and fitness, and just life in general. The quality of your life is going to be determined by the quality of your thoughts. So I really like the phrase mental fitness. Where it's like, you have to do the repetitions to get your muscles stronger. You have to go to the gym and you have to work hard. And I think with your mental fitness, it's like, okay, you have to do the things that help you to make your brain strong. And if that's like practicing gratitude every day, or journaling, or talking to someone, having these back and forths, whatever it is for you, there's obviously different ways to improve your mental health, but really focusing on that mental fitness as well as your physical fitness, I think it's really important. And it's why to go back to the question of why I got into this. I think it's just the more I found out, the more I realized, the more I saw, the more I could not unsee or ignore it. I was like, okay, if I really want to be the best trainer I can be, I can't ignore that side of people's, because what people are saying when they come to work, which is that I want to be happier, I want to be more confident, I want to get the most out of life. That's really what it comes down to in terms of their goals. They might say I want to lose weight. What they're really saying is, I want to be able to enjoy life, be comfortable in my skin, to be present in the moment and not worrying about how I look and so on and so forth. And again, to do that, I think to really get the most out of life, to really embrace life and enjoy it as much as you can. Yes, you need to be physically strong, you need to be mentally strong, and you need to have strong relationships. And the more I seen that, the more I couldn't just ignore that part of helping people, I think.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely, and well done on that. That sounds amazing and absolutely needed. It's not the way it should be, like you say. It's definitely something that should be funded through the government, and they, let's be honest, probably, if not definitely, have the ability and resources to do that. But unfortunately, yes, it falls now on the shoulders of other people to do it, which is not really fair the way it should be. But amazing work. So thanks for doing that. And I'm sure your clients and the young people who've benefited from that are, very appreciative of that too. So yeah, I always finish off the interview with a couple of questions. And the first one I have is, what advice would you give to a man who's finding themselves in a tough place right now?
I would say, go and be an act of service to someone. I think for me, right, when I was struggling with my mental health, that was the minute that I created the idea of the Carried Away. So I was struggling with my mental health, and what I did was I essentially alchemized it that, okay, I'm going to help other people with their mental health. So I immediately put the problems of me away from me and turned it more into a solution that would help other people. And I think the biggest cheat code in life is to help other people. And like, it can be something so simple. Like, I think there's a great study where it's like, if you buy a coffee for 3 people, so buy 3 people a free coffee, that day you will instantly feel better. It's like a 100% dopamine kick, because like when we do things for other people, we feel amazing, and we're not thinking about ourselves then, and we're not thinking about our own problems. We're not thinking about the struggles that we have. Now, I understand that can sound really difficult thing, or like when you're really struggling and you're finding it hard to pay the bills. You might be socially anxious. You feel like you don't know anybody. You feel like nobody gets you. You feel like nobody cares about you. You feel like you have no direction. Like, go and volunteer. Go and volunteer. I guarantee you, it will be the best thing for you. It really helped me. I think it's a great, and it can be something. It can be something so simple. So I would say, try to be an act of service. Again, try to, I'm always very careful of trying to give advice out, especially to men, because there's a lot of kind of hustle culture, toxic hustle culture in the world, and I think that actually also has a detrimental impact on a lot of young men's mental health at the moment as well. It's like, oh yeah, you need to be doing this and this and making this and this, and if you don't, then you're a failure, and you're not a real man if you're not making 10x every month or whatever this crap is. But I do think that having purpose, having a goal, whether that's just getting yourself in shape, setting out to be able to do a 21-kilometer run, whatever it is, like really getting yourself in shape and testing your physical capabilities and building resilience and knowing that you're actually capable of more. I think that's empowering, and I think that could be the step that puts you in the right direction for the next goal, whether that is getting your finances in order, getting into a relationship, being able to whatever the thing is for you. It's very difficult to give one blanket statement advice to many people who are suffering from different things. But if you can be an act of service, if you can find goals that challenge you but make you better, I think that is probably your best bet for starting off with. And then, of course, if you need that extra bit of help, don't be embarrassed about getting that extra bit of help. I think, again, there's been a lot of work to reduce the stigma around, reaching out for help and using mental health services. I think it could be the best thing you do. Like, we all have blind spots. We can't see, even the best people in the world, like the most self-aware people in the world, they can't see everything that they're doing. That's why they do go to, whether it's a counselor or a therapist or a coach, they go to people to bounce ideas off so they know what the next direction for them to go in is. And I think, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Like, people will have a personal trainer because they want to get physically strong, but then they won't have a counselor to get, mentally strong. I think, anyone who wants to be successful in life, whatever that looks like to you, it's having a team around you of people who can help you to achieve that. So, be an active service, chase after goals that are difficult, but, worth pursuing, and reach out for help when you need it.
Yeah, you've summed that up really nicely. And I totally agree. I find it quite interesting that, men would probably not bat an eyelid when it comes to getting a personal trainer or someone to help them, especially if it's like a goal like building muscle. But when it comes to sorting their mental fitness, like you've touched on earlier, it's a different story altogether. And that's not to to blame men for that. It's just that that's the way it is, of course. And
That's why I think, 100%, and I think that's why we need to kind of. It's almost it's like everything else. It's like you almost need to make it sexy for it to be a trendy thing. Then it's like the wellness industry is trendy now. Everyone wants to do an ice spa. Everyone wants to do a sauna. Everyone wants to have a acai bowl or whatever they're called. Like, it's when you make something trendy and cool, everyone gets on board with that. And I think it would be great if we could find a way to make kind of looking after your mental health cool and trendy, that men want to do more of it, I think.
I agree. And actually, that kind of taps into what I've been working on quite recently, because I've had a think about this. And, I do find that a lot of the language that's used around therapy and counselling and stuff like that is potentially quite off-putting for men. So I've kind of thought about, like, how could you potentially adapt the language to make it more friendly for men in a way that it's going to sound more inviting. It's not, it's not sort of it's still conveying what therapy or counselling is, but it's doing it in a way that it's not that doesn't throw barriers up in their mind almost. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic.
Think about a sports psychologist. Everyone is like, "Oh, you have a sports psychologist? That's class." They like that's like, "Oh, this man is serious about his goals. He's a high performer." But essentially, that's all that is just in a sport context. It's just therapy.
That's a really good example, actually. I hadn't considered that. Yeah, that sums it up perfectly, definitely.
Because it's like an athlete might be suffering with anxiety of taking that shot, of going for that goal, whatever it is, of being on the main stage, and it's like, a sports psychologist, their goal is just to break these things down for them. And I think it's the exact same thing, but we need to find, again, a trendier way of saying it. I mean, I think counselor sounds a little bit more better than therapy. I'm going to a counselor, but at the same time, it's still not the thing. It's still not.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. It's and hopefully in time, society will either move on to the point where it's no longer throwing up these mental barriers for men, or, as you say, maybe we will kind of start to phrase it and word it in a way that is maybe less off-putting. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. The final question I always finish the interview off with is, what one word would you use to describe a strong man, and why?
Oh, that is a difficult one. Capable, maybe. And when I mean capable, I don't mean capable of handling your emotions, capable of being self-aware when you need help, capable of being vulnerable when you need to be vulnerable, capable of being an absolute beast when you need to be an absolute beast, capable of, protecting your family, of providing for your family, providing for yourself, capable of getting yourself out of a dark hole. I think men need to feel capable. I know I do. I know when I feel like I'm capable of doing things, that's when I feel my best, whether that's, capable of getting out of the bed and going to the gym and then feeling better after, capable of finishing that email, capable of, doing a podcast, capable of, confident enough to step out onto a stage, capable of going for a run, capable of asking someone for their number, whatever it is. It's like feeling like you're capable of doing whatever it is that you want to do, and capable of getting through whatever it is that you need to get through. I think when someone knows that they're capable, I think that gives them a little bit of hope, and I think hope is something that a lot of men are missing right now.
Yeah, it sums it up nicely. And I agree with my own story. When there was no hope, that was the worst. It wasn't the physical symptoms that came from struggling with my mental health. It wasn't the social isolation. It wasn't the mental fog and the lack of concentration and the constant sort of self-loathing. It was the hopelessness that was the worst. That was the most challenging part of just getting through day after day. Was just that hopelessness. So, and I think capability is can be the remedy to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like if you see, even if you're in the worst situation ever, if you can see a way out, that's you've something to move towards. It's when you can't see a way out, that's when the most tragic circumstances happen. And of course, there's always a way out. There's always hope, but sometimes it's hard to see that.
Well, Carl, thanks so much. It's been brilliant just to chat to you and hear a little bit about your story and the work that you do and that sort of thing. Before you head off, do you want to just take a minute just to let the listeners know where they can find you and maybe share a bit more about your projects as well that you're involved in? I'm sure they'd be really interested to hear a bit about those things.
All right, nice. So you'll find me under the Uneducated PT pretty much everywhere. So the Uneducated PT on Instagram, on Spotify and YouTube, where I have my own podcast as well, which I definitely want to get you on, Chris, and we can have another conversation. Really, really enjoyed today. I think you're a great interviewer. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure your podcast is going to be a huge success, and I'm sure the listeners really appreciate the fact that you have these kind of deep and nuanced conversations as well. So I've really enjoyed today. The projects that I have coming up. So one project that I have coming up, or that I constantly do, is I also run a hiking group. It's a free hiking group where it's just you get people out in nature, exercising, moving their body, and then meeting new people. And then we do, off the back of that, we do a couple of different retreats a year. So we're doing a trip to Madeira in Portugal at the end of the month, where it's 14 people, never met each other before, but they go hiking and they get to make new friends and they get to connect. And again, that's why I'm trying to use social media to get people to connect with other people that with like-minded kind of hobbies, and do something kind of more impactful that way. So yeah, so you can find the Wicklow Hikers group, where we'll put on retreats every couple of months in different places around the world. Obviously the Carry the Way initiative that we have for free mental health, that's out of Bray, County Wicklow, and again, we do a sunrise hike 4 times a year, trying to raise as much money as possible, and that is for free mental health services in our town. And then I work in a gym and stuff like that as well, but that's only for the local people. Nothing worldwide for that. But again, if you wanted to hear more about the stuff that we do, it's probably best on the Uneducated PT podcast.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much for your time, and we'll definitely chat again soon, because it was a really good and enjoyable conversation. So thanks so much, Carl, and you take care of yourself.
Thanks, my man.
Thank you.